So you're out here and you're shopping for a 10mm handgun, but you're not exactly sure which one you want to go with, man. There's so many choices out there, you just can't decide. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull two 10mm from my collection and I'm going to put them up against each other in a versus video. So today on Armchair Operator Guns and Gear Reviews, we're going to do a versus battle between the likes of Smith Wesson with the Smith Wesson M&P 10mm Performance Center, and we're going to go up against FN, the FN510 Tactical. Let's get into it.
Yo, no, I ain't the type to give up. If I do something, man, I do it till I get what I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something I love.
What's going on, everybody? It's your big homie, the Armchair Operator, and welcome to today's program. Now, if you're new to the channel, thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you find this video informative and maybe a little bit entertaining. And if you're coming back to the channel, thank you so much for coming back. I really do appreciate it. I hope you also find this video informative and entertaining. Now, as I said in the intro, today we're doing another versus video. We're doing a versus video between the Smith & Wesson M&P 10mm Performance Center, and we're going to put it up against the FN510 Tactical. Now, I have full reviews on both of these particular pistols. You can check out the reviews. I'll put the links down in the comment section, the pinned comments, so that way you can check it out. And they'll also be in the end card at the end of this video. So if you want to go there and check out the reviews on both of these, you can do so. Now, about the FN510, so I've heard a lot of people say that the FN510 is probably the best 10mm handgun out here on the market, hands down. I've heard that a number of times. So I have some thoughts on that, which I will share in the video, and I'm going to put it up against the M&P. Now, if you saw part one of my great 10mm debate, you'll notice that the M&P, well, rather you'll remember that the M&P actually won that versus, and it was going up against the SIG X10 and also the Glock 20 Gen 5. I no longer have the SIG, but I still have the Glock 20 Gen 5. I didn't really want to include it in this video because I felt like in that instance it didn't really make a whole lot of sense since the Glock already lost the previous versus. So I figured I would take the winner of that one and put it up against the newcomer on the block. So that's what we're going to do. And the point of my versus videos, for anyone who may not be familiar with why I do the versus videos, is to put near peer guns together to see how they compare against one another in terms of features, accessories, functionality, all those different things. The point of all of this is to give you all, the consumers, a better idea of what you might want to look into as far as your next gun purchase, basically. And today we're talking about 10mm, so that's going to be the focus of this video. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to slide on over to the review space, and we're going to go through several different categories of each particular firearm. And those categories are features, accessories, ammo capacity, ergonomics, portability, concealability, shootability, reliability, disassembly for maintenance, cleaning, stuff like that, aftermarket support, and the value for the money. Now, I'm going to go on a caveat and just say that neither one of these pistols are carry guns, concealed carry guns, but some people might want to carry a full-size 10mm. Both guns are full-size 10mm. Whichever you decide to do is ultimately up to you. It's a category that's there, so I gotta talk about it. All right, so let's go on over to the review space and let's dive into this versus, y'all. Let's go. Okay, everybody, welcome to the review space. And we have our contenders here. We got the M&P 10mm Performance Center on the left, and we got the FN510 Tactical on the right. And before we get started, we gotta verify both firearms are clear. So let's do that now. This particular firearm, the chamber is empty. Magazine is empty. This firearm is verified to be clear. And the FN510, as you can see, chamber empty, magazine empty. This gun is verified clear, and we are filming in a safe and controlled environment. There is no live ammunition anywhere in my review space. Now, also, just another more like production note. It's actually 4th of July as I'm recording this video, so you'll probably hear fireworks going on outside right now, so that's what that is. So I just wanted to say that. Okay, now, so here we are with the two firearms here. So the first category we're going to talk about the features of these two pistols. And the features category actually breaks down into a few subcategories that we're going to get into. Now, usually where I like to start at the top, and I like to start with the sights. So as far as the sights, both guns have suppressor height night sights. They do it a little bit differently, but they're basically the same. So if we're looking at the M&P, I don't know if you can see that sight picture. Of course, we got our tritium filled night sight in the front, and we have two tritium dots in the back, and they have the white outlines for both the dots in the rear and the dots in the front. And these are night sights. Just one thing to note, this is actually different from the standard Smith Wesson model, M&P 10 millimeters, the 4.6 inch or 4.5 inch barrel, and the 4-inch barrel. They have optics height sights, but they're just standard white dot sights. They're not tritium filled. These are tritium filled. So I just wanted to add that little caveat. And the FN510 essentially has the same. It has the same style of dot in the front. It has the white outline with the tritium fill, but the dots in the rear are actually a little darker, but these are also night sights. So to me, they're both equal in terms of their functionality. Both suppressor height sights, they're both metal sights, they're both night sights. So I'm going to give them a tie in the sights category for that particular feature. Now I will say that some people will prefer this particular sight picture more because the rear dots in the back are darker than the dot in the front. So that actually helps. That might help some people to acquire their sight picture a little faster. So I just wanted to put that out there. But for me, for the purpose of this video, they get a tie in the sights. Next, we're going to move down to the slide serrations. And essentially, the M&P has really good slide serrations in the back. The problem is it kind of falls short up in the front because it's really smooth. Now, granted, yes, we have the high power cut. If you want to run the slide that way, you can. But as you can see, all of this is relatively smooth, so it's not really much to grip on. You do have the fish scales up here in the front, as you can see on both sides, but that's basically it. Now, the FN510 has pretty good slide serrations both in the front and the back. That being said, I gotta give that particular feature over to the FN510. Now, from there, both particular guns have an M1913 Picatinny rail underneath for your lights, your lasers. I don't know who's mounting handgun lasers on their handguns in 2024, but hey, if that's what you want to do, do you. But anyway, they both have Picatinny rails underneath, so they each get a point in that category. And that brings us to the ambidextrousness of each pistol. So both pistols actually have ambi features. For example, the M&P has an ambidextrous external safety. Yes, I know it's the dreaded external safety. A lot of people don't like the external safety, but it's on the gun, so it's there. You have a safety on both sides of the pistol, which is actually pretty cool. And also, the slide catch is also ambidextrous on the M&P 10 millimeter. So you got one on there and one on that side. All right. As far as the FN510 goes, you also have an ambidextrous slide stop right here and right here. But you also have an ambidextrous mag release. So you can hit it on this side and you can also hit it on this side. And I will say FN has probably made one of the best ambidextrous magazine releases that I personally have seen. So that's really cool. But all in all, as far as ambidextrous features go, they get a tie in that point because they both each have a feature that's ambidextrous. Although most people will probably prefer the FN510 in that regard because it doesn't have an external safety, but it is what it is. All right, so moving on from there, we're going to talk about the trigger. So let's talk about this trigger. So verify clear once again. Now, this is actually the performance center version of the M&P 10 millimeter, which means this trigger is actually a bit lighter than that of the other two models. That said, this is a really good trigger, and I would actually go as far as to say that this is better than the trigger that's on their 9mm performance centers. But that's just my opinion, especially the metal frame. Feel free to fight me in the comments. But I got my trigger scale here, so let's try to get an accurate reading on this trigger. All right, so we're going to I think that broke at a little over 5 pounds, but I'm not satisfied with that, only because of the way that the gauge moves. So let's do it again. Okay, I don't know if you can see that, but we are at the 4 pound mark. Let's reset and go again. That's the only thing about this particular trigger gauge. I don't like the fact that this spins. If it didn't spin, it would be a much more accurate reading. Let's do it again. It looked like it's below 4 pounds, but it slipped. So let's do it again. And we are at a little over 4.5 pounds. So I would say it's about a 4.5 pound trigger pull for that. Now let's look at the FN510. Now I'm just going to go as far as, I'm just going to go ahead and say that the FN510 has a pretty decent trigger in its own right. Don't get me wrong. It does. But anyway, let's see what it looked like. That looks like it slipped at about 4.5, but that didn't count in my opinion. Let's try it again. Of course, this would be a lot easier if I had a vice block or a bench. All right, so that is a little over 5 pounds, okay? Let's go again. Okay, that's about a 4.5 pounder. All right, and we're gonna do one more time for the road. So yeah, about 4.5 pound trigger. So I mean, all in all, I mean, they're pretty comparable, but I'm going to give that particular point over to the M&P. Reason being, this trigger still feels a little softer to me, but it's the reset. It's where it's at. And that reset is noticeably shorter than that of the FN510. That was a little stiffer break. And that's the reset. So all in all, that's the trigger. I'm going to give the point over to the M&P. Next, we're going to talk about the optics readiness of both pistols. Both guns come with optics cuts, and they both come with the plate to mount, with plates to mount your optics. The M&P has more plates, but that's pretty much irrelevant. The point of the matter is both particular pistols are optics ready, so they get a tie in that. And as far as the features of the barrel, this is a cold hammer forged threaded barrel for the FN510. As you can see the threads here, you can mount your suppressor on here. Maybe one day if somebody were to make compensators for the FN510 that can be threaded onto the barrel, you could put it there. But whatever the case may be, you have a cold hammer forged threaded barrel. Whereas on the M&P, you have a 5.6-inch barrel that is also ported. So as you can see, those are cuts right there. That's actually in the barrel and also in the slide. Now, one fun fact about the M&P 10mm Performance Center, the barrel is only rifled up until about 5 inches. The rest of it is actually smooth, and that is simply there to accommodate the ports. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case anyone did not know that. But all in all, they basically get a tie in those categories as well. And neither pistol is really modular. So with all that being said, we're going to give both guns a point in the features category. So it's essentially a tie. Next, we're going to talk about the accessories. And essentially what you see before you is everything that comes with each respective pistol outside of the magazine. So if you look at the M&P, for example, you got your interchangeable grips, which is pretty much standard on all their M&P lines. Nice aggressive grip texture, and you have different sizes. You actually have 4 of these. One is on the gun, and they go from small, medium, medium large, and large. I have the large one on the gun, which is why you don't see it right here. And we have a number of optics plates here that you can use to mount all your many different type of optics, from your Trijicon RMRs to your Holosuns to your Delta Points and so on. Now I will note that most of these are polymer, but this particular one is actually metal. I just noticed that. How about that one? But anyway, and then we have your customary gun lock because safety, right? So that's everything that comes with the M&P. Now, if we switch on over to the FN here, we have our optics plates again, and it actually uses the MRD system, which that's what these are right here. We got a different screw attachments. We got a little tool, a little O-ring, and everything like that. The FN510 has interchangeable back straps, but they only give you 2. This is the smaller one of the 2. It's actually for a thinner grip. So those with smaller hands, you'll probably want to run this particular one. Personally, I have the larger of the 2 because I have larger hands and it's more comfortable for me. And we have a gun lock because safety, right? So personally, I'm going to give the point of accessories over to the M&P, mainly because of the back strap, the grips, the wraparound replacement grips. I just think that these do a more effective job at, well, 1, they have better texture, and 2, they fill your hand out more versus just the back strap replacement for the FN510. And also the optics plates, you just have more options to choose from. Even though they're polymer, you still have more options to choose from. So that extra versatility to me gives it a leg up over the FN510. Therefore, the M&P gets the point in that category. Next, we're going to talk about ammo capacity. And the way I define ammo capacity is simply this. How many rounds can you carry on your person with this particular gun when you first buy it? And essentially, it's just mathematics. So we got 2 magazines for both guns. We got 2 15 routers with the M&P 10mm performance. Same as the standard M&P 10mm, by the way. And we have 2 magazines with the FN510. We got a 15 rounder and we have a 22 rounder. 22 rounds of 10mm, now that's saying something. So simply put, FN wins the ammo capacity because you have a 15 and a 22 versus 2 15s. Simple, right? All right, so next we're going to go on to ergonomics. All right, now we're going to talk about ergonomics. And ergonomics is one of those subjective things, okay? I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. What feels good or feels right in my hand may not feel the same way for you, and vice versa. But anyway, let's look at the M&P. So from an ergonomic point of view, I like the way the M&P feels in my hands. You have probably some of the most aggressive grip textures out there as far as polymer frame guns go, and the M&P 10mm has enough texture where it really locks the gun into your dominant hand. Now, another thing that I like, and this might be controversial, I do like the fact that even though it has an external safety, which I would be perfectly okay without the external safety, but I can ride that external safety kind of like I'm holding a 1911 or a 2011 and really get another point of contact on the gun. So as I'm drawing and presenting the firearm, it just helps me to keep the gun stable in my hand. So I really like that. And one thing I do like about the M&P grips over, say, most other handguns is the fact that they give you a palm swell. Now, a lot of guns don't really give you a palm swell, but the M&P line does. And my guess would be that that comes from their revolvers, because if you ever held a Smith Wesson revolver or a lot of revolvers, they do give you that little bit of a palm swell. So I do like that about it. If I had a criticism about the M&P's ergonomics, is that this particular part of the grip is smooth and they could use some texture as well as that on the frame itself. All right, now let's talk about the FN510. What I like about the FN510 is that they basically give you texture throughout. Like they give you the texture up here, they give you the texture right here, which is really good, especially here, so you can get that support hand thumb on the grip as you're gripping the gun. And you got a decent amount of texture on the back strap. on the front of the grip and also on the sides. Now, if I have one of my criticisms about the FN510, at least for me, in the 10mm cartridge, that the grip feels a bit thin for me. So it's just difficult for me sometimes to really get a good dominant shooting grip with the FN510. And my grips honestly really haven't been very consistent. Now, with the 545, which is actually the 45 caliber version of this, for some reason, it just feels better to me, even though they're dimensionally the same. And I think that just basically, it's not so much they feel better. Let me back up for a second. I think it's just the differences in the cartridges, 10mm versus 45. And you'll see what I mean when I get to the actual shootability portion of the video. But all in all, I mean, I do like both, but I gotta give the M&P the point for ergonomics because it just simply feels better to me in the hand, and it has more texture where it really matters the most. And now that that's out of the way, let's move on over to portability and concealability. All right, so we're gonna talk about portability and concealability for right now. Well, let's just get concealability out of the way from the rip. The FN510 is going to win that one simply because it has a shorter barrel than the M&P. So if you're wanting to carry one of these guns, you're going to have a much easier time, well, concealed carry, meaning carrying this concealed versus carrying that concealed. All right, so the FN510 is going to get concealability, even though, as I said in the intro, they're not really concealed carry guns. But anywho, let's talk about portability now. So portability, for that, we're just simply going to look at the weight of the guns. We're going to start with the M&P, and both pistols are unloaded, so this is essentially their unloaded weight with the magazine inserted. And the M&P is sitting at 31.75 ounces. And the FN510 with the 15-round magazine is clocking in at 31.61 ounces. So, I mean, really, the FN510 wins the portability category by just a hair. Just a hair. Now, again, this is with the 15-round magazine, but just for shits and giggles, let's check it with the 22-round magazine real quick. All right, so with the 22-round magazine, we're looking at 32.98 ounces versus the 31.75. So this is a bit of an interesting one. Of course, with the longer magazine, it's going to weigh slightly more. But with the 15-round magazine, it's going to be slightly less. If we're going same dimensions of magazine, the FN510 wins that one. So I have to give the points for both concealability and portability over to the FN510. Now let's move on over to shootability and reliability. Now we're going to talk about shootability and reliability. Now I recognize that this particular category is kind of the nitty-gritty for most people whenever we're talking about firearms, and especially we're talking about versus. As far as the shootability goes, let me just say this right off rip. Both guns are excellent shooters. I enjoy shooting both of them, and they're both really fun. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Now, talking about the M&P, so the ergonomics of the M&P just makes this gun a bit more forgiving and pleasurable in my opinion. Also, one of the things that makes this gun stand out from a shootability standpoint more so are the ports in the barrel. And it really shows, like, as far as my groupings were tight and very much more consistent with the M&P versus the FN510. Now, this is a good shooter too, don't get me wrong. And my issues with the FN510 as far as shootability portions are purely shooter related, not the gun related. And I'm just going to keep it a stack with you. My support hand grip was dog shit on the range the last couple times when I did the versus of that, because I've had times when I was on the money with the 510, but the last few times my grip sucked, and I am 100% willing to admit that. That being said, this particular gun is more forgiving when it comes to that, and I attribute that to, one, superior ergonomics for my hand. It fills out my hand more, and also I could actually get a, as a result, I can get a better handle on the gun. And when you're talking about 10 millimeter, that's a big damn deal. And two, the ported slide and barrel. This gun is actually noticeably softer shooting than that of the FN510, which is the reason why this particular gun won the shootability. It's a much more fun shooting gun. And let's not forget the trigger. The trigger is also superior with the M&P. When we come to reliability, here's where things kind of fall apart with the M&P. If you remember my 900 round update video, you'll recall that I had about 9 failures to feed in that first 900 rounds that I put through the gun. And I will admit, I did not clean the gun a whole lot at the time purposefully because I was testing its reliability. Some people would say, you know, clean your guns. Obviously, it definitely makes sense too. But my point is, the gun has some failures. Now, since I've replaced the magazine springs with the Springer, I think they were Springer Precision Extra Power magazine springs, I haven't had any reliability issues since, and I'm probably sitting at about 700 rounds fired through the gun since then without one single cleaning. So let's keep that in mind. However, I still have to note those 9 failures to feed when I first got this pistol. Now, as far as the FN510 goes, I haven't had any stoppages in this particular gun yet, period. And I've also have not cleaned this pistol since I've gotten it either. So when it comes to reliability, I have to give the reliability point over to the FN simply because I haven't had any reliability issues with this particular gun whatsoever. But I also say that with a caveat in that since I have replaced the magazine springs with my M&P, I have not experienced one failure to feed in this gun at all. And like I said, I have not cleaned this pistol since the 900 round update video. So when it comes to shootability, the M&P takes that point. When it comes to reliability, the FN is going to take that point. And now from there, let's move on over to disassembly. All right, so field stripping these two guns is essentially identical. They both use the takedown lever system, and I can't really go through the full disassembly process because YouTube guidelines forbid it. But essentially, you run the slide to the rear, rotate it down, let the slide go home, pull the trigger, and take the slide right off for the M&P. And it's basically the same deal for the FN510. With the addition of having to remove the thread protector for the actual threaded barrel when you want to remove the barrel from the slide. The M&P, you just take the recoil spring out and take the barrel out just like you would do with any semi-automatic firearm. So all in all, they both get a point in that category because it's basically the same process for each gun. So no real leg up for either one in that area. Now, from there, let's talk about aftermarket support. So both particular guns are well supported in the aftermarket, but the M&P line has just been out way longer than FN's 5 series of guns. And when I mean 5 series, I mean 509, 510, 545, etc. So this gun has just been out longer, and it'll be a lot easier to find for you to find both magazines, replacement sights, although I can't imagine why you would want to replace these sights, but you can find sights for this thing, mags for this thing, holsters for this thing. The list goes on and on. So as far as aftermarket support, the M&P is going to take that. And now we're going to go to the point of the MSRP. Now we're going to talk about the MSRP. So the MSRP for the Smith Wesson M&P 10mm Performance Center is about $749 according to Smith Wesson's website. The FN510 on the other hand is $1,139 MSRP according to FN's website. Now, those are just the MSRPs as listed by the manufacturers. The street price for each gun will vary depending on your location. But all in all, as far as MSRP, the M&P is the much cheaper option, coming in at sub $800. So therefore, the M&P gets the point for the MSRP. Now the final category we're going to talk about is the value for the money. The M&P gives you a lot for a sub $800 price. You have an extended ported barrel and slide. You have suppressor height night sights. You have a very good trigger. The performance center trigger in this thing is really good. Nice, crisp reset and everything. You have great ergonomics. And this gun is just fun to run overall. I mean, when you're talking about accuracy, this is a damn accurate pistol. So this thing is befitting of performance center, in my opinion. Now the FN. The FN is significantly more expensive than the M&P, even though it has similar sighting setup. It has great texture. It has a good solid trigger and so on and so forth. But where the value add for this particular gun is, at least in my opinion, outside of the 22 round magazine, is its bomb-proof reliability. This thing runs, period. And that's where I think a lot of its value goes to. It goes into its reliability. And ultimately, when you're buying a gun for whatever purpose, you want the damn thing to work when you need it to work. And so far, the FN510, at least for me, in my opinion, has proven that. So, all in all, I say all that to say neither particular gun stands above one another in terms of the value for the coin. So, I'm going to call that a tie and just give both of these guns a point for that category. And now that we've gone through all the categories, let's sum up what we have. Okay, to recap. In the category for the features, both the FN510 and the M&P get a point for that category. When it comes to accessories, the M&P takes the point there. Ammo capacity, the FN510 takes the point there. Ergonomics, the M&P 10mm takes that point. For the portability portion, the FN510 takes that, with the 15 round magazine inserted because it's slightly lighter. And as far as concealability, the FN510 is slightly smaller than that of the M&P, so therefore it takes that category as well. When it comes to the shootability, the M&P 10mm takes that point. It's just far more pleasurable to shoot. Now, as far as the reliability goes, I have to give it to the FN510 Tactical. It hasn't failed on me yet. Now, granted, the M&P hasn't failed since I made the magazine spring change, but I had to make the magazine spring change in order to get the thing to be reliable. So I can't give it the point in that category. Disassembly for cleaning and so on is relatively the same, so they each get a point in that category. And the categories of aftermarket support and MSRP go to the M&P simply because it's easier to find accessories for the M&P. Therefore, it's more supported in the aftermarket, and also it comes in a few $100s cheaper than the FN. And as far as the value for the money, we're going to give them a tie in those two categories, which brings us to a grand total of 8 for the M&P 10mm Performance Center and 7 for the FN510 Tactical. So, the winner of today's versus is the Smith & Wesson M&P 10mm Performance Center. I have to say, though, I am a little surprised that the M&P won the versus. In a way, I'm surprised, I'll say, and in a way, I'm not. I'm surprised in that due to the reliability issues. But I mean, frankly, that's the only real issue that I have with the M&P, and I had that issue with the original magazine springs. But like I said, since I put the extra power magazine springs, I haven't had any issues out of the gun. And I really enjoy shooting the M&P, and it's also a bit more forgiving when you have crappy support hand grip. So there's that. Now, as far as the FN510, I really do like this gun. This is actually one of my favorite guns in my collection. I love the FN510. And it's just that when it came to my ability to run this thing, it was just a little less forgiving than that of the M&P. But I really do like this gun. I like it a lot. Now, as far as the operator's choice go, which gun would I pick to use if I could only pick one? So that's actually a bit of a tough one because, like I said, the M&P is the better shooter. It's more ergonomic and it's more comfortable to shoot. Well, this version of the M&P. I don't know about the standard one, but the Performance Center one definitely is much more pleasurable experience. But if my life depended on it, I would have to go with the FN510 because, like I said, this thing just runs, and it has ran for me without any issues thus far. And actually, what it all boils down to, what it all comes down to at the end of the day, when you need these things to protect your life, you need it to work when you need it to work. And this particular gun is it for me. So if I had to carry a 10mm as a sidearm, whether I'm, hunting or going into battle, whatever reason, just whatever hypothetical reason that anybody could come up with, or if in a home defense scenario, not to say that this particular gun won't do the job, because it absolutely could, but my first choice would be the FN510. So I'm going to leave it there. So with all that being said, what do you all think about today's verses? Let me know down in the comment section. Let's get this discussion popping. Do you have a Smith & Wesson 10mm? If you have, what are your thoughts on it? Have you had any issues on it? Issues with it? Do you like it? Whatever. And as far as the FN510, do you feel as though that the FN510 is the best 10mm out there? Do you like it? Do you have any experience with it? I would love to hear y'all thoughts on both of these two guns. And with that, I'm just going to end it here. So again, thank you all so much for watching today's program. This is your big homie, and I'm out, man. Peace.